Your assignment is to replicate this gruesome scene with the space tentacle retracting into the alien's head. So we'll be using a little bit of the warp, the grid warp node, and we'll also be learning how to combine CG with live action plates using some simple, very simple AOVs, a shadow pass. So let's get started. Whenever you get a plate, the first thing you want to do is sort of just inspect the plate and rock and roll through it to see what you're going to be up against. And we can see that the actress here did a really good job of just pantomiming that there was something retracting into her eye. She made her eye turn back, and I don't know how she managed to do it, but she almost made it look like her eyelid opened asymmetrically there, or was like twisting up. I think it was just her pulling down on her eye. But this gives us a lot to work with, so we're not going to have to work too hard, but I think we should probably do a little bit of a warp here to make the eyelid bubble up even more so that when the tentacle retracts, it looks even more gross. So the CG in this case was delivered static because it was pretty obvious just looking at this shot that a full 3D track wouldn't be necessary. The camera move is almost a straight Z move. It's quite telephoto, and while she turns her head back a little bit, the thing that needs to be composited in is a tentacle, and it's really wiggling around wildly and stuff, so you wouldn't really be able to tell if it was tracked on perfectly. So it only needs to track perfectly on this corner. So the decision was made to just render this out as a static tentacle, or static locked to the base was static, and only the tentacle would wiggle around, and then it would retract back in. And then in order to create the shadow, a similar strategy was taken. An image of, or a CG model of a head, a rough approximation of the actress's head, was used to capture a shadow pass that can be used to composite a shadow onto the actress. So let's take this one step at a time and build it up. I've already created a tracker, and all I did was track the corners of the actress's eyes. And I switched this to stabilize to check my track, but I'll turn it off here. And we can see that the one that we're mostly interested in is tracker 1, which tracks this her right eye, screen left eye. And it seems to stick to where the tentacle is going to need to go pretty well. It's slipping around a little bit, but once we average out all of these other trackers, I think we may be able to get a match move that will stick the tentacle to the corner of the eye there. So I would say when you track yours, track every stationary landmark that you can find. The corners of the eyes aren't perfectly stationary, but they're stationary enough for this purpose. If you can get an even better track than this on all 4 corners of the eyes, then you'll get a really good result. So let's start by just dropping in that warp that we're going to have to do. Actually, let's bring in the tentacle first so we really know what we're up against. So we'll just block it. We'll do a slap comp, basically. We'll just rough the thing together using the tentacle. So I'm going to use the tracker node here, and I need a match move. And I only really need transform. I don't need rotate. I only need translate, rather. I don't need rotate because the tentacle's wiggling around so wildly, it's not necessary. So I'll do a transform match move. I only have translate checked off here. Create that transform match move. Attach that to my tentacle. And I'm going to just merge, do a quick merge over A over B and see where that tentacle lands. And if we look at our reference shot, let me go get that. We can see that the tentacle in the reference is quite a bit smaller. It only goes down to her chin here. So let's position, first of all, let's position this thing correctly, and let's also scale it down a bit. So we've got our match move here. We can just drop a regular transform here. And what I'm going to do with this transform is I'm going to put the control widget of the transform, the actual center point of it at the base of the little critter here. So let me let it wiggle around a little bit so I can get a better idea of where that center is on the worm. And I'm holding down Control and dragging the control widget for this transform. There we go. So now I'm transform. When I grab this, I'm kind of grabbing it where I want it to move from. So that should make things a little simpler. So let's go down here, and we can see it is actually tracking to her head already because we have our match move in. But let's drag this down to where we want it to be, which is sort of the corner of her eye in there. And we want it to be a bit smaller. I'm not sure how much smaller, but let's see. Let's start around there. Seems around right, about 80% the size that it originally was. And we'll just drag it into the corner of her eye. Ooh, that looks pretty gross. We'll warp that eyelid up a little bit more later so that it really kind of goes and really bends up and makes it look extra gross. So I'm not animating this. I'm just trying to find the best sort of position that works through the whole shot. So that doesn't work. So what I might have to override this match move just a little bit here with a couple keyframes, depending on how. Well, I think that worked. I think we're finding something that works pretty much the whole shot. And by the time we do a little bit of warping, we'll make up any kind of inaccuracy that we get from this track. We'll make up for in the warp that we do to her eyelid. So let's keep going. I don't really know what the color of this tentacle is meant to be, though to my eye right now it feels a little bit dark compared to the scene. Let's look at our reference and see how that was handled there. The grade in the reference is really different, and that's because the color pipeline, this is actually the output of the that was in the movie, or close to what was in the movie, had a pretty extreme grade on it. But you're not tied into doing your grade that way. This is a slightly more neutral base grade, so you can do this grade however you want in your assignment. I think I'm gonna probably adjust the overall grade a little later, but for now let's try to make this tentacle feel like it sits in the plate. We don't have any AOVs because the lighting scenario here was pretty simple, and this is a very it's supposed to be a very translucent tentacle, so it wouldn't benefit much from having a lot of adjustment now. But let's put in a grade node. I'll put it right here, and I will use the mask for the unpremultiplication. I'll use its own alpha, and we'll bring it, like I said, it feels a little dark to my eye. I don't know. Maybe it's not too dark. Let's see. I'm going to brighten it just a bit just to see how it feels, though. Yeah, maybe that feels a little bit better. And it's supposed to be sort of like a slimy, weird green color. So that might be fine. So that's where we'll leave it for the grade. Now let's start getting the shadow in there.